Hello and welcome to today's lesson on copyright. The lesson objective for you today is to be able to identify and demonstrate knowledge of copyright rules. Today we're going to talk about copyright rules and all the key terms that go along with it, such as intellectual property and copyright infringement. We will talk about how copyright is different from plagiarism and how copyrighted materials can be used through fair use doctrines, and we will discuss the boundaries around those fair use doctrines. This will also lead us into a discussion about Creative Commons and how Creative Commons licenses make it easier for creators to share their work to the public and for the public to find work to use, all while avoiding copyright infringement. And we will talk about materials in the public domain, which is another way to avoid copyright infringement. It is important to know all about copyright while you are embarking on your school research so that you understand what you can and cannot use in your schoolwork and how much of something you can use before it is considered copyright infringement. So what is copyright? Copyright is a form of intellectual property that protects the expression of ideas and not just the ideas on their own. And you are required to get permission before you copy, share, or perform a person's work. You're probably all familiar with this copyright symbol. People's tangible creations, also considered their intellectual property, is protected under copyright law with or without this symbol present. The phrase "all rights reserved" is often used by owners to indicate that they reserve all of the rights granted to them under copyright law. And remember that copyright is automatic as soon as the work has been created. What is considered intellectual property? It is any tangible creations of the mind and is copyright protected as soon as it is created. Intellectual property to consider are literary, dramatic, musical, and artistic works, poetry, novels, movies, songs, computer software, architecture, and so on. What do you need to know if you are going to use someone's work? First, find out who the owner of the work is. Next, ask them for permission to use their work. Next, give credit to the owner in the form of attribution. And finally, abide by copyright rules. When you do not follow the rules of copyright, this is considered copyright infringement. Remember, it's the law. Copyright is a legal issue. You do not have the right to take and use someone else's work without their permission. Anything and everything someone creates is subject to copyright laws. And also remember, there does not need to be the copyright symbol marked on the work for it to be considered copyright protected. That is why you're here today, to learn how to avoid copyright infringement. So how is copyright different from plagiarism? Here's how. When you're working on your research project and you use someone's work, but you don't credit what they have said, this is considered plagiarism. It's also considered plagiarism when you try to pass the work off as your own work. Plagiarism is avoided by giving credit to the original sources by citing it in your work. So make sure to cite original sources in your work. Where copyright is a legal issue, plagiarism is an ethical issue and is also considered academic misconduct, which often results in a student receiving 0 for their work if they've plagiarized. In a post-secondary institution, disciplinary action such as academic suspension is usually taken. Bottom line, don't plagiarize. How are you going to be able to use copyrighted materials from the internet without committing copyright infringement? Let's first talk about fair use. Fair use is a doctrine that allows the use of copyrighted material. as long as you give attribution and use it in certain ways. These certain ways that fair use allows you to use copyrighted materials for specific purposes are for schoolwork, news, social commentary, comedy, or parody. However, there are 4 factors that determine fair use when using a person's work that you must consider. And these are: 1. How you use the copyrighted work. Is it for educational, nonprofit, or personal purposes, as these are considered fair use? Number 2, the nature of the copyrighted work. Is it a nonfiction work or a fiction work that you are wanting to use? Nonfiction works tend to fall under fair use more than fiction works, as the expression of ideas is more emphasized in fictional works. Number 3, how much of the copyrighted work do you plan on using? The suggestion is to use only a small amount of the material and not the main parts or the heart of the work. And finally, number 4, what is the market value of the copyrighted work? So by using it, are you jeopardizing the creator's potential to earn income from their own work? And lastly, don't try to use copyrighted material to make money. That will be considered automatic copyright infringement. This leads us into the discussion of Creative Commons licenses. Creative Commons works in the interests of both the creator of the copyrighted material and people who are wanting to use the copyrighted material. Creative Commons provides a variety of licenses that work within the copyright law so that you are able to use the copyrighted material, but are not committing copyright infringement. Creative Commons licenses allow creators to share their work, so this saves you time, because when you see something online that you want to add to your project, you don't have to go ask for permission from the creator if the work has a Creative Commons license. However, if you use Creative Commons licensed material, you must give attribution. Usually, next to the material, you'll provide the title, author, source or where you found it, and the type of Creative Commons license of that material. You may have noticed the style of attribution provided in the images I have used in each of the slides in this presentation right here. So I encourage you to look for and use Creative Commons licensed materials as you are working on your final research projects, as this will significantly reduce your chances of copyright infringement. Familiar Creative Commons symbols that you will see as you embark on your research are by, which is attribution, and you see this person gives credit to the creator of the work you're using. NC means non-commercial, so you cannot use works for profit, and you see the money sign with a slash through it. ND means non-derivatives. You cannot change the original work of that you are using. It has to be the same work that you're giving attribution to. And SA, share alike. You can make changes to the original work, but you must repost the original Creative Commons license. So those are the Creative Commons licenses and symbols that go along with them. So just as Creative Commons licenses provides a way for the public to use copyrighted work without being subject to copyright infringement, works in the public domain are also another way to avoid copyright infringement, as they are not considered copyrighted materials. Public domain materials are free for the public to use without permission. Examples of materials in the public domain are government documents, copyright materials that have expired. So after a specific number of years, copyrighted materials are no longer copyright protected. So for example, works published in the US on or before 1924. Short phrases, facts, and theories are also public domain. So remember to consider searching in the public domain as you go on about your research. In a nutshell, when you plan on using the work of other people while you are working on your research project, remember to get permission from the creator of the work, give attribution to the creator on your work, or consider following the fair use guidelines to use copyrighted work as you are working on a project in school. So using work within the guidelines is considered fair use. Also consider using Creative Commons materials to play it safe. And don't forget to consider the public domain as another place to research for materials. If you have any questions, I will be happy to assist you. Have fun.